On February 24, 1933, gangsters gunned down Dennis Ziegler here in Chicago. Ziegler died in his son's arms. He leaves behind 11 children and his wife, Edna.
I'm Lissa Morgans, and you're listening to Call Edna. Previously on Call Edna. As you know, we had the 3 men from the list, but Dodie seemed to think there was a fourth man whose name has not been mentioned yet on this podcast. Bruce said, quoting, "If my life is taken, the responsible ones will be William E. Maloney, John Lynch, Lloyd Little, and William Green." And the testimony from the Senate committee is so interesting because it has the accounting of Bruce's letters that he wrote to William Green leading up to his murder. Episode 5, The Committee. Hello and welcome back to Call Edna. I wanted to thank everyone who came with their amazing questions before Halloween for Ask Edna on YouTube Live. I'll have another live in November that I'll announce on Instagram and in the next episode. And feel free to follow me there at Call Edna Podcast, Patreon at Call Edna, YouTube at Call Edna, and TikTok, where I pretend my cats are solving the murder. Getting back to the committee, in today's episode, we'll be going through the McClellan hearing transcripts concerning Bruce's murder. For those not familiar with the McClellan hearings, the committee was officially titled as the United States Senate Select Committee on Improper Activities in Labor and Management, nicknamed the McClellan Committee, and it ran from 1957 to 1960. There's so much one could say about the McClellan Committee, but as it pertains to Bruce's murder, this committee, although it was not chaired by Robert Kennedy, was run by him as chief counsel, and it arose because of the labor environment of the 1950s, namely disputes with the Teamsters Union between Jimmy Hoffa and Dave Beck. And as part of the investigation, they call almost 1,500 witnesses. And that's where they also focus in on William Maloney. And during their investigation of William Maloney, Bruce's murder is discussed by a variety of senators who are running the committee and witnesses, testifying as to what happened with the union amalgamation process in the late 1920s. And the section of testimony that we'll be hearing from today is Clarence Doneth, and I've adapted the transcript as necessary for brevity, so you don't have to hear every single little procedural issue. First, the witnesses discuss how union amalgamation came about.
Clarence Doneth,
Bobby Kennedy,
the chairman,
Mr. Salinger,
Senator Curtis.
The memorandum refers specifically to the activity of Mr. Maloney with respect to Local 150. I would like to call 2 members of Local 150, Mr. Clarence Doneth and Mr. Charles Press. Mr. Doneth, you've been with the operating engineers for how long?
Since 1923, Mr. Kennedy.
What was the first local you were in?
569.
Is that the local Mr. William E. Maloney was also with?
Yes, sir.
Was Mr. Maloney a business agent of Local 569?
Not when I first went in.
Was he subsequently?
He was elected about a year or 2 after I became a member of 569.
Was there a plan underway during the 1920s to amalgamate Local 569 with Local 42 of the Brotherhood of Chauffeurs?
That was in 1929.
And the International Executive Board had ordered the amalgamation?
The international president, sir.
Had most of the members of your Local 569 opposed the amalgamation?
Yes, sir.
Was that opposition led by a man by the name of Dennis Ziegler?
That is right.
And also Edward F. Moore?
Right.
Maloney was in favor of the amalgamation?
Yes, sir.
This is what we discussed in the Brotherhood. This is the first injunction case that Bruce's union brought against Maloney and Huddle in the spring of 1929. To me, this questioning confirms that this was in fact the first injunction that Bruce's union got against Maloney, and 1929 can be officially declared the first year of Maloney and Huddle's takeover.
In May of 1929, Maloney was leading the step toward amalgamation. Did the members of the union vote as to whether they wanted to heave Maloney out of the local?
Yes, they did. Mr. Maloney came into the local meeting in 1929 with an ultimatum from the then General President, Mr. Huddle, that we amalgamate with Local 42. The membership voted that they did not want to go over, so we stayed out and fought.
Did they vote then on William E. Maloney?
Yes, sir, they did. They voted to throw him out of the meeting and expel him from the Union.
Was that a pretty close vote as to whether to oust him?
About 400 to 1.
Leaving Maloney voting for himself and the 400 voting against him?
That is right.
That was in 1929?
Right.
This is the vote we heard about in the Brotherhood. Bruce's union did in fact vote out Maloney 400 to 1. And this is not the first time that a union will try to vote Maloney out. We'll hear later in this transcript that there's another vote involving 150, again trying to remove Maloney from power.
Then did he go to the International and get a charter for Local 150?
I believe he had the charter at the time, Mr. Kennedy.
Anyway, Local 150 was immediately set up with William E. Maloney running it. Is that right?
That is right.
And you received instructions for all Local 569 members to go into 150 under William E. Maloney?
That is right.
Did you try to get an injunction against that?
Yes, sir, we did.
That was subsequently withdrawn?
That is right, sir.
So this is news to me. The fact that the injunction that Bruce's union got in 1929 was withdrawn. I had no idea. And I'm not sure why it was, because it was not part of the court record that we obtained, but I have a couple of guesses. First, it could have been withdrawn because another case had started. As we mentioned, there were multiple cases involving multiple injunctions. So maybe as Maloney and Huddle changed their strategy from amalgamating Locals 42 and 569 with the creation of Local 150, a new court case was filed more pertinent to that fact pattern. So this injunction would no longer be necessary. The only issue with that line of thought is that I don't know why it would be withdrawn instead of just left alone if that was the case. Second, the court could have withdrawn the injunction because it was temporarily issued. Similar to a TRO or temporary restraining order, sometimes injunctions are temporary in nature and there's a period in which they lapse. Or it's possible that the parties asked the court to withdraw the injunction because they had reached some sort of temporary agreement. I'm not sure about this one. I think there was a lot going on in Chicago at this time, so maybe there was a negotiation period at some point between Local 569 and Maloney and Huddle. I'm not really sure that this is exactly what happened, as these parties continued to litigate for the next few years, but at least a couple guesses as to why it was withdrawn.
Now, was it also stipulated that if you did not transfer immediately from 569 to William E. Maloney's Local 150, that you would lose death benefits you had been paying?
That I don't know anything about.
Was it learned subsequently that you could not transfer your death benefits unless you transferred immediately?
Well, I only know about my case, Mr. Kennedy. I didn't go into Local 150 until February of 1935.
Did you get your death benefits at that time?
No, I had to start fresh.
So you lost the payments you had made?
I lost the previous years.
How long had you been making payments?
From approximately 1924 to 1929.
You had been making payments 5 years for death benefit, and you lost that.
Right.
Ziegler was leading the opposition to William E. Maloney in Local 150?
Right.
You were trying to continue your old local as it had remained, and the local that had ousted William E. Maloney?
That is right.
Did you make a request to the International to keep 569 going?
We tried every way we could to keep it going, sir.
About how many members did it have at that time?
When we finally broke up,
Yes,
I would say there were approximately 500 or 600 members in there.
some 500 or 600 members at the time the struggle was going on.
Right.
Did you hear during the early 1930s of the formation of an organization called TAT?
There were a lot of rumors flying around Chicago at that time.
That was the Trucking and Transportation Association?
Right.
In 1930 or 1933, was Maloney and about a dozen well-known gangsters in Chicago indicted for their operations in TAT?
That is right.
That was in December 1933, is that right?
Somewhere around there.
TNT, the case that we've referenced multiple times during our investigation, continues to be a prominent example of what labor racketeering was like in the early 1930s in Chicago. Just as important it is in our investigation, it was in the McClellan Committee transcripts as well, further showing that it's a prime example of exactly what the interaction of organized crime and organized labor looked like at this time in Chicago. And notably, Kennedy does not get involved in discussing Dan Gilbert or Thomas Courtney. And next, they're going to get into Bruce's murder and the letters that were exchanged between him and William Green in the month prior to his murder.
Ziegler, as you say, was leading the opposition. Subsequently, Ziegler was murdered, was he not?
He was.
Will you tell us what happened there?
Mr. Ziegler left the office at the end of his day's work and went home on the streetcar and bus. He got off on the corner of the street he lived on at Addison and Keeler, I believe it was, and he started to walk down the street, and this man came up behind him and shot him in the head, and then jumped into a car and got away.
This was during his opposition to William E. Maloney?
That is right, sir.
Do you know whether there was a document or memorandum in his possession?
No, I do not.
Mr. Chairman, this won't be authentic, first-hand information, but we have a copy of the document that I believe Mr. Ziegler had in his possession or that was available during that period of time. Is that right, Mr. Salinger?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Salinger, prior to the time Ziegler had been murdered, he had been writing letters to William Green.
He had.
You can verify those.
We have copies of the letters. These were typed from copies at the time and made available to the people I got them from. The first letter was written to Mr. Green on January 9, 1933 by Mr. Ziegler. He stated in part, "I am taking the liberty of writing you in the interest of a very large number of engineers, hoisting, portable, and stationary, located in various cities and towns in the United States. These men were for many years a large majority and still are the members of the International Union of Operating Engineers. Because of the many abuses existing within the International Union of Operating Engineers for several years past and still being practiced by the officers of the International Union of Operating Engineers, the rank and file of our organization has completely lost confidence in the integrity and ability of the officers of the International. Many of the officers have so muscled their way into many of the local unions that members feel it is impossible ever again to have the International Union again function as it should, in the interest of the members and in accordance with the principles of the AFL." He goes on to say, "The membership of the organization is sick and tired and disgusted with being classified as being dominated and controlled by the worst form of racketeers, hoodlums, and murderers in America. We want and demand freedom from this stigma." He closes the letter saying, "In conclusion, I desire to make this clear to you, Brother Green. This is not a hasty, ill-advised action by a handful of either disgraced or disgruntled members. But on the contrary, among our men are to be found the very best mechanics, and old-time members are in the vast majority. We have a keen sense of responsibility. We fully realize that if we are to have a good, clean, honest, and efficient organization, it is up to the membership to make it so. I do not hesitate to say to you that if we are granted the charter we ask in less than 6 months' time from the date of issue, we will show you a larger membership than now exists in the corrupt International Union of Operating Engineers. And in 1 year, we will exceed any previous record for membership. Fraternally yours, Dennis B. Ziegler."
Ziegler was writing to William Green, president of the AFL?
That is right, sir.
Green provided in response.
"I would strongly advise against the action which you are planning to take. It will serve no good purpose. If you have complaints against the administration of the officers of the existing organization of operating engineers, surely there is a way by which your complaint can be considered and adjusted. No good purpose can be served by splitting the organization of operating engineers, dividing it into hostile camps fighting each other instead of fighting together. I repeat again, I strongly urge you to desist from taking action which you state you and those associated with you are planning to take. Very sincerely yours, William E. Green.
How long was that before Ziegler was killed?
Ziegler was killed in February 1933.
Just about a month?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that at the time that Green wrote the letter that Ziegler and his associates had already sought relief in court?
They had, sir. In fact, they had obtained one injunction and contempt action against Mr. Maloney and the other officers for attempting to coerce the members of Local 569, becoming Local 150.
They used democratic means, but were beaten?
That is right. He wrote another letter to Mr. Green on January 18th, 1933. In your letter, you say, "There is surely a way by which our complaints can be considered and adjusted. Do you have in mind any method by which this can be done, or any tribunals to which we may go? We are not permitted to assemble in convention." I might interpose that there was not an international convention of operating engineers from 1928 to 1940, 12 years. Whole local unions are voted by supervisors appointed by the President of the International. Other local unions are bodily disenfranchised. The votes of other local unions are flagrantly miscounted so that we may be denied the privilege of assembling in convention and correcting the ills from which the organization suffers. In the absence of a convention, the only remaining tribunal is the officers themselves, whom we charge with misconduct. Are they to be permitted to pass upon the propriety of their own acts? Are they to be the judges of their own stewardship? What chance do we have to have our complaints considered and adjusted? The letter goes on in that vein.
Do you have personal knowledge of the effort Mr. Ziegler was making on behalf of the membership at that time?
Yes, I do. I know he was making a very strong effort to straighten the affairs out down in Chicago.
He was the leader trying to hold together the Union 569 to keep it from being amalgamated with 150?
That is right, sir.
150 was just simply a charter that had been issued to Maloney?
That is right.
They were undertaking to force all the members to go into Local 150.
That is right.
Ziegler was leading the fight to try to preserve 569 and not be forced to join the one-man union?
That is right, sir.
I assume it was a one-man union. He is the one that got the charter and the only man that voted for it.
Who issued the charter?
Arthur Huddle, President of the International.
Is he still alive?
He was murdered.
There were additional phone calls and letters made between Bruce and Green and apparently the United States Treasury. From his column Fair Enough from May 23, 1945, in the Wilmington Morning Star, Westbrook Pegler wrote, quoting, "He appealed to William Green, president of the AFL, and Green accused him of trying to disrupt labor's solidarity. In desperation, he gave information to agents of the Treasury, who then made inquiries into the income of Maloney and others. One night, in February 1933, Ziegler telephoned the Treasury agents, imploring armed protection because he had been chased in a public street and threatened with death. 2 Treasury agents have verified this phone call. And as for the additional letters, from another Fair Enough column on January 25, 1943, also from the Wilmington Morning Star, quoting, "Nevertheless, on January 23rd, Green threw his influence on the side of the brutal racketeer, Maloney, since risen to the international presidency of the Union, which he rules by might and terror, along with the notorious Jersey thug Joe Fay. Green threw his influence against Ziegler and the workers. Your letter dated January 18th makes quite clear what I suspected when I received your former communication," he wrote. "The spirit which you have displayed shows you are not so much seeking redress of real grievances as you are seeking to denounce the officers of the labor movement, myself included, and to utilize real or fancied wrongs as an instrumentality through which you can engage in the denunciation of the labor movement and its officers." On February 23rd, Ziegler made a statement in which he had been pursued on street by 2 of the high racketeering officers of the Union, one of whom yelled, I will kill you yet. Ziegler reported this to one of his friends in the Treasury Intelligence. End quote. I had a couple of thoughts about this one. First off, once again, this newspaperman Pegler seemed to have access to a lot of Bruce's personal correspondence in the 1940s, and I'm very curious as to how he got them. Also, he writes of the threat that Bruce had on February 23rd, and although we have it cataloged as it happening a year and a day before he was murdered, this insinuates that it was February 23rd of 1933, just the night before Bruce was murdered. I don't think that's factually accurate. I do think it happened a year and a day prior, as many other accounts have this other date, but I wanted to mention it as the McClellan Committee is about to discuss the threat made against Bruce.
Mr. Salinger, was there a document that was alleged to have been found in Mr. Ziegler's possession at that time?
The document was alleged to have contained a report of a threat to Mr. Ziegler by Mr. Maloney and his next-in-command, Mr. Johnny Lynch, and it was supposed to have taken place. The memo was dated February 23rd, 1932.
Which was what? And how did that relate to the day he was killed?
It was a year and a day before he was killed. He said to escape these two gentlemen that he jumped into a taxicab, and at that time, one of the two were supposed to have said to him, "You something, I will get you." Now, subsequently, the taxi driver who took Mr. Ziegler away from these two gentlemen was found, and verified what Mr. Ziegler had said, and he did not realize that he had Mr. Ziegler in the cab until he was taken down to the state's attorney's office in Illinois after Mr. Ziegler had been murdered, and then he related the incident to them.
What did he say that was said to Ziegler at that time?
He said exactly what Ziegler said. "You son of a bitch, I will get you yet."
What was the conversation?
The cab driver turned around to Ziegler and said, "Are these guys fooling?" And he quoted Ziegler as saying, "Fooling? Hell, these guys are really out to get me."
Now, Mr. Maloney was present and was one of the two men when Ziegler got in the cab.
He identified the two men who threatened him. One was Mr. Maloney.
Mr. Maloney can answer. In other words, he can state it is true or contend that these statements are false.
That is correct, sir.
I want this in the record so that Mr. Maloney will be prepared to answer these questions when he comes before the committee. Is there anything further?
You mentioned about Mr. Huddle being killed.
Yes, sir.
Would you just relate what happened as far as that was concerned? What was the date of this?
On May 20th, 1930, Mr. Huddle and Mr. Frank Landon, the editor of an International Union of Operating Engineers newspaper, and Mr. Posel, a vice president, were in a Washington, D.C. restaurant when a gunman entered and fired a number of bullets. He got Mr. Huddle near the heart, and he died 10 days later from pneumonia. Mr. Landon was shot in the ear, and Mr. Posel was missed completely. That would be approximately a year after Mr. Maloney was given that local.
Was anyone prosecuted for that murder?
No, sir.
Was anyone ever arrested for it?
No, sir.
Going on, after Mr. Ziegler was killed, subsequently, you did go into Local 150, did you?
In 1935.
Did you or any member of your family have any personal difficulty during this period of time? Were you threatened, or your family was threatened?
My father was slugged on the Daily News job when the Daily News building was built. He was beaten up at that time when the job was going on. He was working for W.J. Newman when they were sinking the wells for the building. Two men came into the engine room that they had had there for a big electric air compressor and called him a lot of names and said he was fighting Maloney. And they beat him up. And they said they were going to get me too. This happened on a Monday morning about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So my father came home from work about 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and he was pretty well beaten up. So I asked him what happened, and he told me. I asked him, I said, "Do you know who did it?" And he said it was the Davis brothers. I left my house, and I had had a date with Eddie Morgan in the Sherman Hotel at 10 o'clock. And on the way downtown, I stopped off at the Union office, which was then in the Plumbers Hall at Washington and Ada Street. So I walked into the office, and I said to the secretary, "Who are these Davis brothers that think they are so tough?" I said, "You tell them that they had better be careful, or they are going to get hurt too." So one man was standing there, and he was about 6 feet tall, and he said, "Who are you?" And I told him, I am Young Donuts. That is a nickname they call me. He said, well, I will take you to him. And so I said, okay, let us go. And so we went downstairs, and I gave him a pretty good trimming. And I gave him what he gave my father.
Do you know what his name was?
His name was Davis, and I don't know what his first name was.
They did not bother you after that?
They never bothered me since then.
This time period was violent for so many labor union members, as we discussed in The Racket, and Clarence Donith's experience is no different from them.
We have mentioned here about the TAT indictment and Maloney being indicted with some dozen others in connection with that. What do the records show happened to Mr. Maloney?
He was acquitted.
Did he stay in Chicago?
First, he went to Miami to see how things were going to go.
Who did he go with to Miami?
With Mr. Johnny Lynch.
Who was his assistant?
That is correct.
What subsequently happened to Mr. Lynch?
He was acquitted also on the same charge. However, while Mr. Maloney and Mr. Lynch were in Miami, the members of Local 150 voted to oust both of them from office and to call a new election. And they notified the general president of the Operating Engineers Union by letter in January of 1934 that they were going to take this action.
What action?
Kicking Maloney and Lynch out.
That is Local 150?
The members.
Go ahead.
To this they got a rather curt telegram from the president, Posel, stating they could not do anything of the kind.
Did they vote on kicking him out?
A vote of 268 to 1, as I recall, or 268 to nothing.
By the membership?
That was this new local now?
Yes, sir.
They did not want him either?
That is right.
Do you have the telegram that was sent back to the local?
This is a copy of the telegram sent to the local by John Posel on January 16, 1934. It says in part, recent actions of membership in the regular meeting of January 1934, condoned by appointed officers and representatives, are all without authority and bespeak an attempt to foster rebellion and secession without cause. You are hereby ordered and directed to immediately recognize the authority of William E. Maloney as supervisor for and in behalf of the General President, and file with him copy of all activities in record form of the monthly meeting of January 1934. It goes on, and it ends with this little admonition. Govern yourselves accordingly. Signed, John Posel.
That was the president of the International at that time, denying the right of the 200 and some odd members of Local 150 to have any voice in the operation of their local, and denying them the right to reject and get rid of Maloney, who had been appointed or who had been given this charter?
And he was at that time under indictment for extortion.
Now, you have been fighting for independence during this whole period of time?
Yes, sir.
And subsequently, you joined Local 150 in 1935, and since then, you've been trying to get independence for the local?
That is right, sir.
Despite that, and despite the fact that the local has been under trusteeship since 1929, despite the fact that the local has been chartered since 1929, you never have been allowed to vote for your officers?
That is right, sir.
Although the committee wanted him as a witness, I don't think Maloney ever actually showed up to testify, so we don't have a formal verification of Maloney's accounts against Bruce, but I don't know who would admit to saying that they chased someone in the street unless they had some sort of spin on the story. And when Bobby Kennedy writes his book, The Enemy Within, which largely discusses his time on the McClellan Committee and the investigations therein, Bruce's murder is mentioned in a couple of lines. And it's clear from the family correspondence that I have from Dodie that the family was hoping that maybe, and finally, there would be some sort of federal prosecution for Bruce's murder. While I'm not someone who believes that prosecution actually provides people with solace or justice as much as they think it will, it was clear that the family was desperate for some sort of action or information regarding Bruce's murder. But the Department of Justice writes back to Dodie and says that they could not follow up on Bruce's murder because it wasn't a federal crime. So if anything were to be done, it would have to be at the state level in Illinois. At this point in our investigation, we have so many leads and so many people that we're suspicious of. And now that we have the background, we're going to start going group by group or one by one to narrow down on our list to see who exactly murdered Bruce. And I think we're looking for 3 people. In reading the accounts in the Chicago Tribune and the February paper right after his death and accounts thereafter, it's been made clear that we have the getaway driver who's driving the 1930 sedan. We have the man who steps out from behind the tree and actually fires the bullets into Bruce's head. And then there's another person, either sitting in the passenger seat or the back seat, as in the driver, someone else, and then the hitman. So who are these three people? As we've grown more suspicious of Maloney in this process, I kind of want to place him as one of the people who's in the car. At first I was hesitant to place him on the scene at all, but as time has gone on, and after we learned that Bruce tried to turn him in, potentially for tax fraud, I do think he's one of the three people involved. For some reason, I'm not placing him as the getaway driver. To me, that would be a more seasoned member of organized crime. And I'm not sure how handy he was with a pistol, although at such close range, I guess you don't have to be. And I'm leaning more and more as we investigate as him being in that car, sitting there, watching Bruce die. And I don't know who the other two people are. So going forward, as we narrow down the list and go one by one, group by group, we're going to start with Maloney and see if this hypothesis is right. Is he in the car, or did he possibly fire the shots into Bruce's head? And there's something else I want to leave you with, and that's that there may be an eyewitness to the murder. I haven't been able to verify the account. Doty summarized in newspaper reporting, listing the name of someone who witnessed Bruce's murder. This is the first time I've seen an eyewitness account, but when I tried to pull the paper that Doty quoted from, I couldn't find it. I went on to pull all the other papers that she had referenced, and I found almost every single one except this one. So I've been hesitant to share it because I'm just not sure, but I think it's time that we mention it, that there may be an eyewitness to this murder, and we have his name, Howard Lagerquist.